Hello everyone, Katie Sutton here, intuitive channel and founder of Zen Within Academy and the New Earth Now School with your September 2025 energy update. August was such a interesting month, a lot of big things happening for me personally. It felt working through some major layers, and I'm sure all of you experienced some interesting energies in August as well, as we were clearing out collapsed feminine energy for most of the month. As we move into September, I've got 4 themes that I'm going to share with you this month. And it's a wild card month. I had more trouble than usual narrowing down to 4 themes because there's a lot of energy flying in a lot of different directions, and there's this air of confusion or illusion that's present right now because we have an eclipse portal coming up in September. So before I get into the themes, just astrologically speaking, on September 7th, we have a total lunar eclipse with a full moon in Pisces. And on September 21st, we have a partial solar eclipse with a new moon in Virgo. We also have later in the month equinox energies coming in, of course. So we've got a lot of astrological influence tapping into our energetic themes this month. Okay, so let's get into what's going on for September. The first thing that I want to talk about is this idea, this theme of up-leveling your empowerment. Specifically, one thing that I've been seeing in some of my sessions is that people's souls and their bodies are having new levels of communication as we go into the month of September, and that this idea that more of their soul's light can actually anchor and be embodied is something that we've been working on for several months. People are having a different experience of embodiment and different experiences of what it means to be in their power than they ever have before. Typically, in the past, in our very polarized lens, we've looked at power as being something through the lens of success or money or the things that we're doing in the world. What I'm starting to notice people come to the awareness of is that their power actually comes from the stability and the resilience and the wholeness, the unified aspects of self that they can tap into. Our ability to see through a higher perspective the parts of us that are struggling and look at them without judgment is really expanding. And that's going to amplify our healing process and amplify our capacity to begin to embody and integrate more of our shadow self and use those shadow self aspects as a superpower. When we go into eclipse energy, we often have a lot of shadow work that happens, which is why it's hard to tap into the energetic themes this month, because we've got a lot of wild card energy when we go into shadow work, because everybody's shadow shows up differently. And certainly on the collective level, we see the shadow, and it's very obvious when we're working through shadow elements on the world stage. But when it comes to working through it on an individual level, it's hidden in the subconscious. It's living in the back of our brains, so to speak. And in order to bring that forward, we normally need some sort of initiatory experience or some sort of trigger in our life experience to begin to bring those shadow parts to the surface so that we can look at them and heal them. This month, when we're up-leveling our empowerment, we're really going to be looking at those shadow aspects and seeing them through a new light and being able to see that they're not all bad, that there are parts of us that are still healing, that are ready to be integrated. And as we integrate them, they can come to be a part of the unified whole that we are as a soul and begin to actually assist us in doing our work in the world and bringing our unique medicine to the world. So this up-leveling of empowerment is a very inside job. Last month we worked on the theme of inner expansion. And that was the main thing that we really activated. I think that's going to expand this month, and that inner expansion, those inner downloads or those inner awarenesses that came forward for you, you're going to start to have some clarity and some insight of, oh, how can that part of me, that part that's expanding, that part that's healing, that superpower that I'm starting to get connected to, how can that serve in the world? Or what can I do to bring that part forward so that I can be a better member of my community, for example, a better member of the human collective? This up-leveling of empowerment is going to maybe feel a little subtle, but there's going to be a new level of stability that you drop into this month through this first energetic theme. Let's tap into theme number 2. This one is called Trusting Your Unique Journey or Your Unique Path. I am witnessing a lot of people doing a bunch of external comparison right now. Virgo energy is very interesting. I'm married to a Virgo, and they tend to be very hard on themselves. There's a lot of perfection. There's a lot of self-criticism. And when that energy gets activated for us to work with, it often has us looking outside of ourselves for validation and needing other people to tell us that the way that we're living or the way that we're experiencing our reality is okay. And I think this month we're going to really be asked to pull that energy back anywhere where we're looking for that external validation and begin to internally validate that our journey is our own and that it is perfect for us because that's the way that it's happening. This idea that we should be doing it differently can really derail us from being able to just be in that state of flow and trust about what's happening in our lives. If we start comparing our life or our path or our journey to other people, even if they're similar to us, we're missing the mark of being able to be in our truth with ourself and what our path is. So if you find yourself this month really going outside looking for that validation that what you're doing is right, I invite you to call that back home and really start to self-validate and understand that there's probably a wounded inner child part living underneath that is asking for that validation energy. There is a basic human need, especially when we are children, to be seen and heard and validated. That is because as we are children, we are stepping into our unique essence. We are stepping into our personality, and we need that kind of external input, if you will, as we're starting to build that personality structure. But most of us didn't get that sufficiently when we were younger. Either our parents were too busy or they just didn't care, and we didn't have that level of validation that we needed. I do see this changing with the current generation, but if you're older like me, then you probably didn't get everything that you needed, and that can create this kind of gaping wound in our soul essence at the inner child level that we keep trying to fill over and over again. And so if you're doing something that you love, if you're doing something that lights you up, if you are doing something that feels fulfilling to you, it is the right path for you, even if those around you do not understand it. It is a month in September to really get into that place of insightful awareness within yourself and allow your heart to lead your journey, to lead your path forward in this life. If you have been operating in a paradigm where someone has given you a life path and you've just said, oh, I'll just do that because it's easy, this might be a month where the universe comes in and shakes some things up and says, hey, you're comfortable, but you're not fulfilled. And what would it look like if you were more fulfilled? And that kind of takes me into the third theme, which is ending of endings. It's a little bit of an interesting play of words there. So 2025 is a 9-year. If you add up 2, 2, 5, that's 9. 9 years are completion and endings. It is a difficult time to start new things, but we can plant seeds for new things when we're in a 9-year. This is the last eclipse portal of the 9-year. Eclipses are about endings. Eclipses are about cycles closing out. Eclipses are about patterns ending. Eclipses are about letting go, a release of energy so that new energy can come in. So we've got an ending on top of an ending. I think that we're going to be clearing a lot of frustration and anger energy in this. And as we release that frustration and anger energy, we're going to begin to get some clarity around our next steps and what we should be doing next and what we're going to be calling in for 2026. 2026 is going to be a 1 year, right? Where it's going to be a beginning year. And I know a lot of you are probably frustrated because you've probably been trying to start things this year and maybe you're planting seeds and then you have to go back, or you get a big pause, or there's some sort of derailment that happens and you can't take the next step. Just understand that's the energies. It's a very hermity kind of energy this year where we're doing a lot of inner work, we're doing a lot of letting go, we're purging, we're clearing out. And when we're doing that, it takes up a lot of our capacity for connection and new energy and new creativity. And so if you've been feeling like, I just can't create something new, I just can't get out there and launch this thing that I've been working on or been thinking about, understand that you're not alone, because when you're in a 9-year, beginnings are hard. They don't go as smoothly because our focus really should be on what we're letting go of and making space for the new energy to come in. And 2026 is going to be a very different year. There's going to be some very amazing new beginnings coming, but we got to get through 2025 first. We got to really close out things and let them fall away. And I do feel like this ending of endings theme, one of the ways that the guides talk to me about it is that there can be peaceful endings. It can just be a quiet good night of something. It doesn't have to be this big, dramatic, difficult state of closure where there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of heartache. It can just be looking at something and saying, I don't think this is for me anymore. I feel like I'm complete with this and I can just let it go and it's okay. And I don't have to be concerned that I've done it wrong or done it right. It's just reached its completion and I can let it go. I do think a lot of this is probably going to show up in your relationship space where there are connections, or maybe there's a job where you're relating in the world that is coming to a close this month. And as you close that out, really honor it, but then understand that you're creating space for what's coming next. Allow these things to come to completion in their own divine timing. Also, trying not to force an ending before it's time. This is really about a divine timing kind of idea. And when we have eclipse energy, you don't have to work very hard. It really stirs up the things, and there might be big patterns, ancestral patterns that you're closing out as well with this, because I do see, as I've been working with people the last couple of days, that we're really coming to a fine point on some things that we've been struggling with for a long time, and we're really ready to let that go. And that may not just be for you, that might be for an entire family line. So allow the endings, celebrate them, be honoring of it, and just let it be. Let it be. Try not to hold on too tightly to something that is no longer working. That's the third theme. And the fourth theme is called Being the Witness. And this one is so interesting. So what I've been noticing as I've worked with folks on this is that they have people in their lives who are having very extreme emotional reactions to things, maybe even to them. And they're being asked to just witness that person's process without trying to fix it, please them in any way, or transform their experience. And I think to some degree, we're always working at a collective level on witnessing humans and letting them just be human as they are, and not being in judgment of whatever their process looks like. So just like in that second theme where you're not judging yourself because your process looks different than somebody else's, that goes both ways, right? So this theme is really maybe going to ask us to look at either externally to us where people are having big emotions and we don't need to take or fix that, or internally, it might be that there are big emotions that come up for you this month. Sometimes that happens when we're in eclipse portal and there's shadow work. And instead of going into your mental body and trying to really understand and suss out why is that emotion coming up, this theme is really asking you to take a step back and just witness the expression of the emotion in its pureness. Our nervous system gets involved, or when we're around somebody who's expressing an emotion that has been scary to us. This is a month to be able to pull back and just witness yourself or others having this emotional process and separating from the story. A lot of times when people are deep in an emotional process, maybe they're grieving and they don't know how to handle that grief and they just get locked in anger, for example. It's very easy for them to project their pain onto us, and for us to then start to caretake those emotions and take that on. And last month we worked a lot on this patterning of stepping out of the collapsed feminine, where we either weren't expressing our emotions at all or we were getting snowed under by our emotions. Now the next stage is, how do I be with these emotions? What does it really mean to sit with and feel versus think in our emotional experience? And that means that we're probably going to be doing some sacral chakra work this month, because our sacral chakra is where our emotional body lives. And when we are clearing things out around our emotional experience, the sacral chakra comes into play. And I do think that this is going to help us, because I think a lot of us are having maybe some pockets of really big unprocessed emotion that we have been too afraid to tap into, or maybe there's something happening in the collective at the world stage that we've been afraid to tap into emotionally and experience and witness. This is also going to expand our ability to witness what's happening on the world stage and be able to continue to expand our ability to be in neutrality while we witness those things. And again, I know a lot of you ask me about this. Neutrality doesn't mean that we're detached. Neutrality doesn't mean that we don't feel. It just means that we understand that there are some things that are out of our control that we have to witness. And witnessing that is allowing that energy to shift. Then there are other moments where we definitely get called into action and we know that we need to take action to affect change in something that we've witnessed. Those are two different lanes that we're getting accustomed to in this theme. Sometimes we are going to be in that action lane where we need to take action for ourselves or somebody that we're witnessing in pain, we need to help them. And other times we're going to realize that there's nothing that we can do. And I think being able to witness someone in pain and realizing that there's nothing that we can do to fix that for them is a very hard thing to be with. Sometimes we have parts of ourselves that are deeply in pain, and there's nothing that we can do other than witness that pain and just let it be felt. And in allowing it to be felt, we begin to transmute that pain and it becomes something else. It turns into courage. It turns into our ability to take next steps. So this is a month to slow down and really be with whatever arises. That full moon in Pisces that we're going to have on September 7th, while we have that lunar eclipse, is really going to kick this off. And then we'll have a 2-week window where we're really going to have the opportunity to be with whatever arises without judgment. And the beautiful thing about eclipses is astrologically, it's doing the work for you. So if you can allow something to come to the surface and just observe it, maybe you just witness and observe that emotion that's coming to the surface without trying to understand it. The eclipse energy will allow the clarity to come in of any action that you do need to take if something needs to be cleared or something needs to be worked with differently. So give enough space to your emotions this month, especially in that 2-week window between September 7th and September 21st. And in our healing circle this month, we're going to work on all 4 of these themes. We're going to do some special work to get us into the energies of the eclipse and using those energies and doing some shadow work. But we're also going to really work with this theme of being the witness and how we can tap into that emotional body and let the purity of the emotion just move through us without having to go into a judgment story or a mental body story around it. There's also just some wild card energy in there this month where anything could happen at the collective world level. And again, practice being in your neutrality, witness that, and try not to go into a fear story about that, because anything that is happening in this eclipse portal is serving to close out chapters so that as we move into next year, new beginnings can come online, whether that's for you personally or at the world stage level. When we have eclipse energy, there's often a lot of really crazy headlines that go on and a lot of chaos that goes on. But through chaos, change can be created. Chaos gets energy moving, and sometimes that is what's needed when there is stagnation. So definitely pay attention to that this month. The last thing that I'll say is that your ability to tap into routines and structure is just going to expand this month. We are going to have these Virgo energies that are really calling us to get back in connection with ourselves and what routines and structures support us. This happens every year at this time. It's also when the kids go back to school, but give yourselves a little bit more runway than you would normally give yourself to get back into your routines, especially if you're a parent with kids going back to school. The first couple of weeks of September are going to be interesting energies with this eclipse, and so don't be too strict and too controlling. Really just give it some time to anchor in. But by the end of September, once we get through the equinox on the 23rd, I think we're going to have a lot more sure footing underneath us and feel a little bit more solid as we go into October and into the rest of 2025. All right. Allow the completion energy, allow the endings, trust your path, trust your journey, be in your empowerment, and don't forget to witness your emotions. I'll see you in October.